She stopped eating. She stopped speaking. The world had become too loud, too cruel, too broken. Greta Thunberg, long before standing on the world stage, stood alone within herself, misunderstood, frozen by anxiety, isolated by the weight of what she saw. Doctors called it depression. Society called it a disorder. But what if it was something deeper? What if her silence was the earth speaking through her? This is not just the story of an activist. This is the story of a girl who found healing, not by retreating, but by rising, by turning despair into movement, isolation into global connection. Her protest was never just about the planet. It was about saving her own life, one breath, one strike, one tree at a time. And in that, Greta teaches us a new truth, that sometimes saving the world is the only way to save yourself. Asterisk the silence before the STOR, before the protests, before the global speeches, there was silence. Greta sat in her room surrounded by a world that didn't seem to care. News of melting glaciers and burning forests played on the screen, background noise to most, unbearable weight to her. She stopped speaking, not out of rebellion, but because words lost meaning in the face of so much collapse. Her parents worried. Doctors labeled it selective mutism, depression, autism. But none of them asked, what if the earth was speaking through her? What if her silence wasn't a breakdown but a message? A raw, unfiltered sensitivity to a dying world felt in her bones. Her body refused to keep living in denial. Her soul couldn't pretend everything was normal. Greta wasn't sick. She was awake in a world asleep. An awakening is always painful. She describes it not as sadness, but as a kind of internal collapse. Like watching the house you live in burn and no one noticing. Her mind felt like a forest set on fire. Panic, urgency, helplessness. Yet everyone around her seemed untouched, unfazed, comfortably distracted. This disconnect became unbearable. How could she live in peace when the earth screamed for help? The pain she felt wasn't just hers. It echoed from the soil, the air, the oceans. But at the time, she had no words to explain this grief, so she shut down like the planet shutting down piece by piece. Isolation was not a choice. It was the only space where truth still echoed, where she could feel without being told to calm down, where she could listen, really listen to what the world was saying. It's easy to call this depression, but Greta now calls it truth trauma. The psychological impact of seeing reality too clearly, too young. And in a society built to distract and numb, that clarity can feel unbearable. But it was in this darkness that her transformation began. Not with therapy, not with pills, but with purpose. When she found the courage to act, her voice returned. And when she acted, something inside her shifted. This wasn't about becoming a hero. It was about survival. Her healing started the moment she chose not to suppress the pain, but to give it a voice, a name, a mission. And that mission would soon shake the world. Asterisk, a strike for the planet, a strike for the SOI lit, began with a cardboard sign. Für Klimatet. 3 words that carried more weight than an entire parliament's silence. She sat alone outside the Swedish parliament, skipping school, but it wasn't just class she was striking against. She was rejecting the numbness, the passive collapse, the adult world's denial. Each hour she spent on the pavement was a reclaiming of voice, a declaration, I see what's happening, I won't stay silent anymore. People passed by. Some scoffed, some stopped. But what they didn't know was that this wasn't just activism. This was Greta's therapy, her return to life. It's her first act of healing. What doctors and medication couldn't reach, activism began to unlock. With every interview, every person who listened, she felt less alone. Not because her pain vanished, but because it found purpose. The despair that once crushed her now moved like fire through her words. A controlled burn, clearing space for clarity and courage. In speaking for the planet, she was finally heard by others and by herself. Her silent war had found an army. And with that, Fridays for Future was born not as a political stunt, but as a global release of grief, anger, and awakening. What? Started as a personal rebellion, became a collective ritual, sacred rhythm of resistance, weekly heartbeat of planetary care. She never intended to lead a movement. She simply refused to participate in a system killing everything she loved, and in doing so, she gave millions permission to feel again, to cry, to rage, to question, to act. Her protest was more than a message, it was a mirror, reflecting the emotional cost of environmental collapse back to the world. Hey, we weren't just losing trees and glaciers. We were losing meaning, sanity, soul. Greta's voice sliced through the fog of comfort and ignorance. Not polished, not performative, just real. And that rawness made it powerful. Because healing doesn't begin in perfection. It begins in truth. Asterisk nature, the original THRAP, Greta, never needed a couch to begin healing. She needed moss, wind, silence. She found more therapy in forests than in fluorescent-lit clinics. Nature didn't ask her to be normal. It didn't try to fix her. It simply existed, wild, chaotic, alive, and in that she saw herself. Among trees older than time, she remembered how to breathe. Not just inhale, but truly breathe, with awareness, with reverence. Urban system, so often overstimulated by cities and screens, found rhythm again in birdsong and rainfall. Mind, once racing with apocalyptic images, softened in the presence of rivers. Nature absorbed her grief without judgment. And in return, she vowed to protect it not as savior, but as kin, someone who had been saved by it. Science now confirms what Greta always knew intuitively, that nature is medicine. Exposure to green spaces lowers cortisol, reduces anxiety, and boosts focus. The Japanese call it Shinrin-yoku forest bathing. But for Greta, it wasn't a trend. It was survival. She found in the forest what she couldn't find in noise: coherence. The trees held space for her silence. The earth grounded her panic. The cycles of life and decay reminded her that pain is natural, but also that life continues, regenerates, heals in nature. She wasn't sick. She was sacred. Right. Part of something far older and far wiser than human systems. This sacred relationship reshaped her activism. It was no longer just political, it was deeply personal, even spiritual. She wasn't fighting for nature. She was fighting with it, as it, her body, her mind, her message, it became a vessel of the earth's cry. And this reconnection gave her strength. Not the loud kind, but the quiet, rooted kind, like a tree weathering storms. The more time she spent among ecosystems, the more aligned she became. Not cured, but connected. Not fixed, but reintegrated. Greta learned what many forget. We don't protect nature to save it. We protect it to save ourselves. Fame, fire, and the fortress WITH in Greta never asked to be famous. She didn't dream of stages, cameras, or Time magazine covers. Her message was never meant to center herself but the planet. Yet in a world obsessed with faces over facts, she became a symbol, a lighthouse, a lightning rod. For many, a beacon of hope. For others, a threat to comfort, to convenience, to denial. Suddenly, she wasn't just a girl protesting. She was mocked by presidents, ridiculed by media giants, dissected by strangers. The same sensitivity that once isolated her now made her vulnerable. But Greta didn't collapse. She transmuted. She made the attacks part of the fire that kept her moving. Still, it took a toll. Imagine standing in front of the world with nothing but your truth, and watching the world laugh, distort, or ignore it. Greta's face became a battleground projected upon by billions. But she remained grounded, not by ego, but by essence. She didn't seek validation from followers or critics. Her compass wasn't external applause, it was internal alignment. Every time doubt crept in, she returned to the trees. Every time the noise became unbearable, she touched the soil. Her sanctuary wasn't online. It was under open skies. This balance was essential. Fight outside, restore inside. Activism, for her, was a cycle of burning and rooting. She built an inner fortress, not made of walls, but of roots, anchored in purpose, nourished by nature. The more the world tried to shake her, the deeper she dug. Her clarity came not from bravado, but from knowing who she was fighting for. Not herself, not her brand, but the children yet to be born, the forests yet to be cut, the ice yet to melt. She carried a grief most people refused to feel, and instead of running from it, she carried it with grace. She became the mirror the world tried to shatter, but you can't break what bends like wind through the trees. And that resilience, that's not just bravery, that's healing in motion. Asterisk, a global movement. Roots of BLONG, what began as one girl with a sign soon became a forest of voices. From Sweden to São Paulo, Delhi to Dakar, the seeds Greta planted took root. Fridays for Future exploded not as an organization, but as a shared awakening. A silent knowing passed between young people. You feel it too, don't you? The grief, the rage, the exhaustion of pretending everything is fine. And for the first time, they weren't alone in it. Across borders and languages, they gathered not just to demand change, but to feel connected, to belong. Protests became therapy. Banners became emotional release. Marching was no longer political, it was primal. It was saying, I exist, I care, I will not numb myself anymore. This was planetary solidarity and emotional survival. Greta didn't just spark a climate movement. She helped ignite a global support system for emotionally awake youth. In this community, vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was sacred. Its mental health wasn't treated as a separate issue. It was part of the air they breathed, the soil they protected. Eco-anxiety found a language. Climate grief found arms to fall into. In talking about the earth, they began to speak about themselves, their fear of the future, their mourning of lost childhoods, their hunger for meaning in a collapsing world. And through it all, Greta stood not above them, but among them. One voice in a choir of defiance and tenderness. One root in a forest of collective healing. This network of youth reshaped what it means to resist. It wasn't just about laws, emissions, and politics. It was about reclaiming joy, future presence, about saying, we will not inherit your silence. They meditated in streets, cried in circles, sang in the rain. They weren't just demanding action, they were embodying care. In a world addicted to speed, they practiced slowness. In a world selling disconnection, they practiced listening. Every gathering became a ritual of reconnection. With each other, with the earth, with their own breath. Greta had lit the match, but they built the fire. And in its warmth, a new kind of hope began to grow. Asterisk, when science caught up with SE and SI for years. Greta was called too sensitive, but now science is echoing what she always felt. Eco-anxiety, climate grief, solastalgias, these are no longer poetic terms, they are clinical realities. Diagnosable, treatable, universal. Psychologists are seeing rising cases of youth anxiety directly linked to environmental collapse. It's no longer just about personal trauma. It's collective, systemic, planetary, and the ones who feel it most are the ones who are most awake. Like Greta, many young people are not broken. They are responding appropriately to an insane world. They are mirrors reflecting what society refuses to face. And that reflection is finally being studied, not silenced. Studies now show that environmental degradation increases depression. That loss of biodiversity creates emotional disorientation. That air pollution affects cognitive function. That rising temperatures are linked to aggression and suicide. The earth and the mind are not separate. Ecosystems. They breathe together, they burn together. Greta understood this long before the research did. Her silence, her protest, her pain, they were data points. Living proof that sensitivity is not pathology, but prophecy. She wasn't overreacting. She was attuned. And finally, the world of science is beginning to listen. Therapists are now asking new questions. Not just what happened in your childhood, but what's happening to your planet. A new field is emerging, eco-psychology. It bridges internal healing with external regeneration. And Greta is at its heart not as a scholar, but as a symbol. Her life embodies the truth that healing doesn't happen in isolation, that we must treat the wound in the world, that mental health must include climate reality. Her story reminds us, maybe our collective illness is the earth grieving through us. And maybe, just maybe, our healing begins with listening to that grief and daring to respond. Sustainability as a spiritual PRICTIC2 Greta. Sustainability is not just recycling or policy. It's a language, a rhythm, a reverence. It's waking up each morning and choosing to do less harm, not because it's trendy, but because it's sacred. Because every plastic wrapper is a scar. Every tree saved is a breath of hope. For her, sustainable living isn't about perfection. It's about alignment. Living in a way that doesn't betray the earth or herself. She speaks of the weight of consumption, how it numbs the soul, of how slowing down, eating consciously, and walking lightly became acts of rebellion and healing at once. They reconnected her body to meaning. This is where Greta departs from politics and enters the sacred. Because sustainability, at its core, is spiritual hygiene. It cleanses more than landfills. It purifies our relationship with life. In choosing the reusable cup, we choose to be present. In refusing fast fashion, we reclaim time. In respecting limits, we rediscover freedom. Greta lives like someone in a temple, not a battlefield. Her food, her travel, her rituals, all minimal, all mindful. She calls this living honestly, not just for the planet, but for her own integrity. It's because sustainability is not a sacrifice. It's an invitation too. Remember what truly matters, and what matters is not status, speed, or success. It's breath, trees, clean water, clear conscience. Greta's lifestyle is not about guilt, it's about coherence. Her inner world and outer actions are in sync. And that harmony, rare in our age, radiates. Healing, she becomes an example of a life lived in deep listening. To earth, to body, to truth. This isn't activism as anger. It's devotion. Sustainability in Greta's hands becomes a prayer. Each choice, a vow. May I do no harm. May live with care. And in that vow, we all find a way back home. Her words don't convince the AWAK, and Greta doesn't speak to please. She speaks to disturb, not with cruelty, but with clarity. Her words are not wrapped in politeness or comfort. They are raw, precise, almost surgical. They cut through the noise and stab at the numbness. While others ask politely, she demands. While others negotiate, she exposes. And in that discomfort, something sacred happens. People shift in their seats. They frown. They scroll away. But her voice echoes long. After the screen goes black, because truth once heard can't be unheard. Her speeches have been called rude, naive, extreme. But beneath those labels is fear, the fear of being seen. Greta holds a mirror to a world addicted to denial. And mirrors are rarely loved. She reminds us of everything we pretend not to know, of the convenience we call progress, the destruction we call normal. She strips away the justifications, and what's left is unbearable honesty. But in that honesty is the beginning of change. Because transformation doesn't start in agreement, it starts in rupture. Greta doesn't ask for applause, she demands reckoning. And that's why her message spreads like wildfire. It doesn't travel through persuasion, it travels through conscience. She awakens the quiet voice we've silenced, the one that whispers, "This isn't right." Her defiance isn't rebellion, it's remembrance. She doesn't speak for the earth. She reminds us we are the earth. And when that truth lands, it doesn't just shift minds, it cracks open hearts. Because sometimes, the most radical thing we can do is feel again. Asterisk racing the clock. Time is a wound and a WAR, and a WAR, 9 a code Greta. Time has never been neutral. It ticks like a threat. Every second is a glacier melting, a species vanishing, a future stolen from those not yet born. She doesn't count days, she feels them in her chest, in her sleep, in her silence. Time isn't linear. It loops through grief. It echoes with warnings ignored. When she says our house is on fire, she doesn't mean it metaphorically. She means it literally, urgently, irreversibly. The countdown has already begun. And yet, the world moves slowly. Leaders smile, shake hands, sign papers, delay. The pace of bureaucracy insults the pace of collapse. While forests fall, policies wait for approval. While oceans rise, reports gather dust. This dissonance is one of Greta's deepest pains. It's not. That action is impossible, but that inaction is chosen. Every delay is a betrayal she feels in her bones, because time doesn't forgive, doesn't pause for political cycles. It marches like climate, with merciless consistency. Still, Greta doesn't surrender to despair. She transforms urgency into momentum. Her speeches are not just alarms, they are accelerators. No more waiting, no more later, because healing is not tomorrow's task. It begins in this breath, this decision, this act. Greta turns time into ritual. Every strike a second reclaimed, every voice a delay reversed. She reminds us, we don't lack time. We lack courage. Asterisk a future to fight for. Regeneration over Faye, our Greta's vision isn't rooted in doom. It's planted in hope fierce and unyielding. She imagines a world healed, whole, and vibrant. Where cities breathe with green lungs, not smog. Where communities flourish on care, not consumption. Her fight is not against the future, but for it. Not for apocalypse, but for awakening. She challenges the narrative of despair, because fear alone cannot build a tomorrow. Her activism teaches us that regeneration is possible, not just in forests, but in hearts. She invites us to imagine, what if healing the planet means healing ourselves? What if our mental health depends on the soil beneath our feet? In this vision, sustainability is not sacrifice, it's revival, a return to balance, to belonging. Greta's call is a call to create, to rebuild, to nurture. It's an invitation to co-create a world where life thrives, not just survives. And in that shared creation, there is joy. There is purpose. There is peace. This future isn't far off. It's here in every choice we make. In the seeds we plant, the waste we refuse, the voices we raise. Greta's activism is a blueprint for this new world. A world where courage outshines cynicism, where empathy replaces apathy, where young and old stand together, not divided. This is more than climate action. It's cultural transformation, healing revolution of mind and planet. And the future she fights for begins with each of us right now. Asterisk embracing fear. Greta's path to RSILENCISI is a constant companion on Greta's journey. Not the paralyzing kind, but a sharp, clear awareness of risk. She knows the stakes of the planet, of future generations, of her own fragile mind. But fear doesn't stop her. Instead, it sharpens her focus, fuels her determination. She embraces it rather than runs from it. This acceptance is a radical form of courage. To say, I am afraid, and I will still act. Greta's resilience isn't born from toughness alone. It grows from vulnerability made visible. She openly shares her struggles with anxiety and selective mutism. By doing so, she dismantles stigma and builds bridges. She shows that leaders can be human, too imperfect, scared, but committed. Methods include retreating to nature for grounding, practicing mindfulness to calm racing thoughts, and surrounding herself with a close circle of trusted support. She understands that self-care is not selfish, it's survival. This balance between action and rest, noise and silence, is what keeps her from burning out. Her activism isn't a sprint. It's a marathon paced with wisdom, which reminds us that sustainable change requires sustainable selves, that healing the planet begins with healing the healer. Greta's journey teaches us that strength and fragility coexist, that to lead boldly, one must also listen deeply to the earth, to others, and to one's own soul. In embracing fear, she finds freedom. Honoring limits, she finds power. And in staying whole, she keeps the fight alive. Asterisk the power of voice. Communicating with heart and truth. Greta, Words don't just inform, they resonate. She blends raw emotion with undeniable facts. Her speeches carry the weight of science and the pulse of feeling. She knows numbers alone won't move hearts, so she speaks of glaciers that weep, of forests that vanish, of futures stolen. Her voice trembles. Sometimes not from weakness, but authenticity. This vulnerability makes her message human, relatable, urgent. She breaks through apathy by reminding us of our shared fragility. Greta uses social media not just to broadcast, but to build community. Her posts are windows into her soul and mirrors for ours. Through art, video, and simple words, she makes climate personal. She invites us to grieve, to hope, to act together. Her communication is a bridge between data and desire, between crisis and care. She doesn't shy away from uncomfortable truths, but she pairs them with vision and compassion. Greta's voice amplifies the silent screams of nature and mind. It channels collective anxiety into collective action. She reminds us that beneath statistics our lives are in the planet's, and that saving one means saving both. Her language is inclusive, not alienating. It calls us to empathy, not guilt. And in that call lies its power. Greta's voice is more than protests, it's healing sound. Asterisk the strength of connection. Family, friends, and COM. Muonite, one walks a difficult path alone, not even Greta. Behind her courage stands a network of unwavering support. Her family, especially her parents, have been anchors in storms. They didn't just watch, they understood. They held space for her pain and her purpose. Friends became sanctuaries where she could be simply Greta, no activist, no symbol. Human connection softened the edges of public scrutiny. It reminded her she is more than a movement, more than a message. She is a daughter, a sister, a friend. These bonds nourished her soul, replenished her energy. They were the quiet strength. Beneath the spotlight, community extended beyond her immediate circle. The global youth movement became a shared family. In rallies and online forums, young people lifted each other, exchanged stories of struggle and hope. They celebrated victories, mourned losses, and cultivated resilience. This collective care created a safe harbor amid chaos. It taught Greta and millions that healing is relational, that no battle for the planet is won alone. Mental health thrives in connection, not isolation. And in this truth, Greta's story becomes ours. A reminder that in the fight for Earth, we find each other. And in finding each other, we find healing. Asterisk a legacy of hope, inspiring future generations. His story is not just her own. It's the seed of a movement that will outlive her. Her courage has sparked fires in hearts worldwide, young and old. I like seeing her a symbol of resistance, resilience, and radical care. She shows that one voice, when honest and relentless, can crack the hardest walls of indifference. Her legacy is a blueprint for sustainable activism, one that honors mental health as much as the planet, that recognizes healing as integral to change. Her footsteps mark paths for those who will follow, paths where activism and self-care intertwine, paths where hope is not naive, but fierce. Future generations inherit more than a warming planet. They inherit a call to action urgent and unignorable. Greta teaches them to carry grief with grace, to transform anxiety into activism, to nurture the earth as they nurture themselves. Her legacy is a reminder that sustainability is more than policy. It's a lifestyle, a mindset, a collective heartbeat. It's about building systems that don't just survive, but thrive. And it's about passing down the courage to dream fiercely. Her journey reminds us all, the future is not given. It is made by those brave enough to fight for it. That fight, healing, and hope are one. The call to heal and act. Your role in this SDR where Greta's journey is a mirror for us all. It shows how healing the earth and healing ourselves are one and the same. Her fight is a call not just to protest, but to transform, to rethink how we live, love, and connect. Each of us holds a piece of this puzzle, Our choices ripple beyond our own lives. Sustainability is not distant policy, it's daily practice. Mental health is not private pain, it's collective well-being. Together, these threads weave a future worth fighting for. A future where hope rises from action and action grows from compassion. This is your invitation. To listen deeply. The planet to your own heart. To recognize anxiety and grief as signals, not failures. To find strength in community, courage and care. Greta's story reminds us, small steps matter. Every recycled bottle, every mindful moment, every voice raised counts. You don't have to be a world leader to lead change. You just have to start by caring fiercely, acting wisely, and healing holistically. This is how revolutions begin quietly in everyday choices. In the spaces between fear and hope, the breath between despair and determination, the planet needs you. Your mind needs you, and the future depends on us all. Real testimonials about Greta Thunberg. 1. Sir David Attenborough, naturalist and broadcaster. Greta is a beacon of hope for the younger generation. Her courage to speak truth to power is inspiring and urgently needed in today's world. R&O, Neo Guterres, UN Secretary General. Greta Thunberg has shaken the world with her courage and clarity. She reminds us all of our responsibility to protect the planet for future generations. 3. Jane Goodall, primatologist and conservationist. Young people like Greta give me hope. She's a powerful voice calling for urgent action to safeguard our planet and its creatures. 4. Barack Obama, former U.S. President. What Greta has done is extraordinary, showing the world that youth activism can spark a global movement for change. 5. Christiana Figueres, former Executive Secretary of the UN. Framework Convention on Climate Change. Greta's determination and passion have inspired millions. She has awakened a sense of urgency and responsibility worldwide. 6. Naomi Klein. Author and activist, Greta Thunberg challenges all of us to rethink our relationship with the planet and with each other. Her message is one of accountability and hope.